In the sixth jhad, the limited is that seen to be limited by gain, fame, relatives, limb or life. The opposite is unlimited, and it is said in the Patisambhida, what is the virtue that has a limit? There is virtue that has gain as its limit. There is virtue that has fame as its limit. There is virtue that has relatives as its limit. There is virtue that has limbs as its limit. There is virtue that has life as its limit. What is virtue that has gain as its limit? Here, someone with gain as cause, with gain as condition, with gain as reason, transgresses a training precept as undertaken. That virtue has gain as its limit, and the rest should be elaborated in the same way. Also in the answer dealing with the unlimited, it is said, what is virtue that does not have gain as its limit? Here someone does, not with gain as cause, with gain as condition, with gain as reason, even arouse the thought of transgressing a training precept as undertaken. How then shall he actually transgress it? That virtue does not have gain as its limit, and the rest should be elaborated in the same way. So it is of two kinds, as limited and unlimited. In the seventh jhad, all virtue subject to cankers is mundane. That not subject to cankers is supramundane. Herein the mundane brings about improvement in future becoming, and is a prerequisite for the escape from becoming. According as it is said, discipline is for the purpose of restraint. Restraint is for the purpose of non-remorse. Non-remorse is for the purpose of gladdening. Gladdening is for the purpose of happiness. Happiness is for the purpose of tranquility. Tranquility is for the purpose of bliss. Bliss is for the purpose of concentration. Concentration is for the purpose of correct knowledge and vision. Correct knowledge and vision is for the purpose of dispassion. Dispassion is for the purpose of fading away of greed. Fading away is for the purpose of deliverance. Deliverance is for the purpose of knowledge and vision of deliverance. Knowledge and vision of deliverance is for the purpose of complete extinction of craving, etc., through non-clinging. Talk has that purpose, counsel has that purpose, support has that purpose, giving ear has that purpose, that is to say, the liberation of the mind through not clinging. The supramundane brings about the escape from becoming, and is the plane of renewing knowledge, reviewing knowledge. So it is of two kinds, as mundane and supramundane. In the first of the triads, the inferior is produced by inferior zeal, purity of consciousness, energy or inquiry. The medium is produced by medium zeal, etc. The superior by superior zeal, and so on. That undertaken out of desire for fame is inferior. That undertaken out of desire for the fruit of merit is medium. that undertaken for the sake of the noble state, thus this has to be done, is superior. Or again, that defiled by self-praise and disparagement of others, etc. Thus I am possessed of virtue, but these other bhikkhus are ill-conducted and evil-natured, is inferior. Undefiled mundane virtue is medium, supramundane is superior. Or again, that motivated by craving, the purpose of which is to enjoy continued existence, is inferior. That practiced for the purpose of one's own deliverance is medium. The virtue of the perfections, practiced for the deliverance of all beings, is superior. So it is of three kinds, as inferior, medium, and superior. In the second triad, that practiced out of self-regard by one who regards self and desires to abandon what is unbecoming to self, is virtue, giving precedence to self. That practiced out of regard for the world and out of desire to ward off censure of the world is virtue, giving precedence to the world. That practiced out of regard for the Dhamma, law, and out of desire to honour the majesty of the Dhamma is virtue, giving precedence to the Dhamma. So it is of three kinds, as giving precedence to self, and so on. In the third triad, the virtue that in the Adhyads was called dependent, number 5, is adhered to because it is adhered to through craving and false view. That practiced by the magnanimous ordinary man as the prerequisite of the path, and that associated with the path in trainers are not adhered to. That associated with trainers and non-trainers, fruition is tranquilized. So it is of three kinds, as adhered to, and so on. In the fourth triad, that fulfilled by one who has committed no offence or has made amends after committing one is pure. So long as he has not made amends after committing an offence, it is impure. Virtue in one who is dubious about whether a thing constitutes an offence, or about what grade of offence has been committed, or about whether he has committed an offence, is dubious. Herein the meditator should purify impure virtue. If dubious, he should avoid cases about which he is doubtful, and should get his doubts cleared up. In this way his mind will be kept at rest. So it is of three kinds, as pure, and so on. In the fifth triad, the virtue associated with the four paths and with the first three fruitions is that of the trainer. That associated with the fruition of arahantship is that of the non-trainer. The remaining kinds are that of the neither trainer nor non-trainer. So it is of three kinds, as that of the trainer, and so on. But in the world the nature of such and such beings is called their habit, sila, of which they say, this one is of happy habit, sukha sila, this one is of unhappy habit, this one is of quarrelsome habit, this one is of dandified habit. Because of that it is said in the Patisambhida figuratively, three kinds of virtue, habit, profitable virtue, unprofitable virtue, and indeterminate virtue. So it is also called of three kinds as profitable, and so on. Of these, the unprofitable is not included here, since it has nothing whatever to do with the heads, beginning with the characteristic, which define virtue in the sense intended in this chapter. So the threefoldness should be understood only in the way already stated. In the first of the tetrads, the unvirtuous he cultivates. He visits not the virtuous, and in his ignorance he sees no fault in a transgression here. With wrong thoughts often in his mind, his faculties he will not guard. Virtue in such a constitution comes to partake of diminution. But he whose mind is satisfied with virtue that has been achieved, who never thinks to stir himself and take a meditation subject up, contented with mere virtuousness, nor striving for a higher state, his virtue bears the appellation of that partaking of stagnation. But who, possessing of virtue, strives with concentration for his aim, that bhikkhu virtue in its function is called partaking of distinction. Who finds mere virtue not enough, but has dispassion for his goal, his virtue through such aspiration comes to partake of penetration. So it is of four kinds, as partaking of diminution, and so on. In the second tetrad, there are training precepts announced for bhikkhus to keep, irrespective of what is announced for bhikkhunis. This is the virtue of bhikkhus. There are training precepts announced for bhikkhunis to keep, irrespective of what is announced for bhikkhus. This is the virtue of bhikkhunis. The 10 precepts of virtue for male and female novice are the virtue of the not fully admitted. The 5 training precepts, 10 when possible, as a permanent undertaking, and 8 as the factors of uposatha de for male and female lay followers, are the virtue of the laity. So it is of four kinds, as the virtue of bhikkhus, and so on. In the third tetrad, the non-transgression on the part of Uttara Kuru, human beings, is natural virtue. Each clan's or localities or sect's own rules of conduct are customary virtue. The virtue of the Bodhisattva's mother described thus: it is the necessary rule, Ananda, that when the Bodhisattva has descended into his mother's womb, no thought of men that is connected with the cords of sense desire comes to her, is necessary virtue. But the virtue of such pure beings as Mahakassapa, etc., and of the Bodhisattva in his various births is virtue due to previous causes. So it is of four kinds, as natural virtue, and so on. In the fourth tetrad, the virtue described by the Blessed One, thus: here a bhikkhu dwells restrained with the patimokkha restraint, possessed of the proper conduct and resort, and seeing fear in the slightest fault, he trains himself by undertaking the precepts of training, is virtue of patimokkha restraint. B. That described thus: on seeing a visible object with the eye, he apprehends neither the sights nor the particulars, through which, if he left the eye faculty unguarded, evil and unprofitable states of covetousness and grief might invade him. He enters upon the way of its restraint, he guards the eye faculty, undertakes the restraint of the eye faculty. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odour with the nose, on tasting a flavour with the tongue, on touching a tangible object with the body, on cognizing a mental object with the mind, he apprehends neither the signs nor the particulars, through which, if he left the mind faculty unguarded, evil and unprofitable states of covetousness and grief might invade him. He enters upon the way of its restraint, he guards the mind faculty, undertakes the restraint of the mind faculty, is virtue of restraint of the sense faculties. Abstinence from such wrong livelihood as entails transgression of the 6 training precepts announced with respect to livelihood, and entails the evil states beginning with scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain, is the virtue of livelihood of purification. Use of the 4 requisites, that is, purified by the reflection stated in the way beginning. Reflecting wisely, he uses the robe only for protection from cold, is called virtue concerning requisites. Here is an explanatory exposition together with a word commentary starting from the beginning. Here in this dispensation, a bhikkhu, a clansman, who has gone forth out of faith and is so styled because he sees fear in the round of rebirths, or because he wears cloth garments that are torn and pieced together, and so on. Restrained with the patimokkha restraint. Here, patimokkha, rule of the community, is the virtue of the training precepts, for it frees him who protects it, guards it, it sets him free from the pains of the states of loss, etc. That is why it is called patimokkha. Restraint is restraining. This is a term for bodily and verbal non-transgression. The patimokkha itself as restraint is patimokkha restraint. Restrained with the patimokkha, restraint is restrained by means of the restraint consisting in that patimokkha. He has it, possesses it, is the meaning, dwells, bears himself in one of the postures. The meaning of possessed of the proper conduct and resort, etc., should be understood in the way in which it is given in the text. For this is said, possessed of the proper conduct and resort, there is proper conduct and improper conduct. Herein, what is improper conduct? Bodily transgression, verbal transgression, bodily and verbal transgression. This is called improper conduct. Also, all unvirtuousness is improper conduct. Here someone makes a livelihood by gifts of bamboos, or by gifts of leaves, or by gifts of flowers, fruits, bathing powder, and tooth sticks, or by flattery, or by bean soupery, or by fondling, or by going on errands on foot, or by one or other of the sorts of wrong livelihood condemned by the Buddhas. This is called improper conduct. Herein, what is proper conduct? Bodily non-transgression, verbal non-transgression, bodily and verbal non-transgression. This is called proper conduct. Also, all restraint through virtue is proper conduct. Here, someone does not make a livelihood by gifts of bamboos, or by gifts of leaves, or by gifts of flowers, fruits, bathing powder, and tooth sticks, or by flattery, or by bean soup, or by fondling, or by going on errands on foot, or by one or other of the sorts of wrong livelihood condemned by the Buddhas. This is called proper conduct. Proper resort. There is proper resort and improper resort. Herein, what is improper resort? Here someone has prostitutes as resort, or he has widows, old maids, eunuchs, bhikkhunis, or taverns as resorts. Or he dwells associated with kings, kings' ministers, secretarians, secretarians' disciples, in unbecoming association with laymen, or he cultivates, frequents, honours such families as are faithless, untrusting, abusive and rude, who wish to harm, wish ill, wish woe, wish no surcease of bondage, for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, for male and female devotees. This is called improper resort. Herein, what is proper resort? Here someone does not have prostitutes as resort, or taverns as resort. He does not dwell associated with kings, secretarians, disciples, in unbecoming association with laymen. He cultivates, frequents, honours such families as are faithful and trusting, who are a solace where the yellow cloth glows, where the breeze of sages blows, who wish good, wish well, wish joy, wish surcease of bondage, for bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, for male and female devotees. This is called proper resort. Thus he is furnished with, fully furnished with, provided with, fully provided with, supplied with, possessed of, endowed with this proper conduct and this proper resort. Hence it is said, possessed of the proper conduct and resort. Furthermore, proper conduct and resort should also be understood here in the following way. For improper conduct is twofold, as bodily and verbal. Herein, what is bodily improper conduct? Here someone acts disrespectfully before the community, and he stands jostling elder bhikkhus, sits jostling them, stands in front of them, sits in front of them, sits on high seats, sits with his head covered, talks standing up, talks waving his arms, walks with sandals, while elder bhikkhus walk without sandals, walks on a high walk while they walk on a low walk, walks on a walk while they walk on the ground, stands pushing elder bhikkhus, sits pushing them, prevents new bhikkhus from getting a seat, and in the bathhouse, without asking elder bhikkhus, he puts wood on the stove, bolts the door, and at the bathing place he enters the water, jostling elder bhikkhus, enters it in front of them, bathes jostling them, bathes in front of them, comes out jostling them, comes out in front of them, and entering inside a house he goes jostling elder bhikkhus, goes in front of them, pushing forward he goes in front of them, and where families have inner private screened rooms in which the women of the family, the girls of the family, sit, there he enters abruptly, and he strokes a child's head. This is called bodily improper conduct. Herein, what is verbal improper conduct? Here someone acts disrespectfully before the community. Without asking elder bhikkhus, he talks on the Dhamma, answers questions, recites the Patimokkha, talks standing up, talks waving his arms. Having entered inside a house, he speaks to a woman or a girl thus: "You so and so of such and such a clan, what is there? Is there rice gruel? Is there cooked rice? Is there any hard food to eat? What shall we drink? What hard food shall we eat? What soft food shall we eat? Or what will you give me?" He chatters like this. This is called verbal improper conduct. Proper conduct should be understood in the opposite sense to that. Furthermore, a bhikkhu is respectful, deferential, possessed of conscience and shame, wears his inner robe properly, wears his upper robe properly. His manner inspires confidence, whether in moving forwards or backwards, looking ahead or aside, bending or stretching. His eyes are downcast, he has a good deportment, he guards the doors of his sense faculties, knows the right measure in eating, is devoted to wakefulness, possesses mindfulness and full awareness, Wants little, is contented, is strenuous, is a careful observer of good behaviour, and treats the teachers with great respect. This is called proper conduct. Firstly is how proper conduct should be understood. Proper conduct is of three kinds: proper resort as support, proper resort as guarding, and proper resort as anchoring. Herein what is proper resort as support. A good friend who exhibits the 10 instances of talk, in whose presence one hears what has not been heard, corrects what has been heard, gets rid of doubt, rectifies one's view, and gains confidence, or by training under whom one grows in faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and understanding. This is called proper resort as support. What is proper resort as guarding? Here a bhikkhu, having entered inside a house, having gone into a street, goes with downcast eyes, seeing the length of a plough yoke, restrained, not looking at an elephant, not looking at a horse, a carriage, a pedestrian, a woman, a man, not looking up, not looking down, not staring this way and that. This is called proper resort as guarding. What is proper resort as anchoring? It is the 4 foundations of mindfulness on which the mind is anchored. For this is said by the Blessed One. Bhikkhus, what is a bhikkhu's resort? His own native place. It is these 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is called proper resort as anchoring. Being thus furnished with, endowed with, this improper conduct and this proper resort, he is also on that account called one possessed of proper conduct and resort. Seeing fear in the slightest fault, one who has the habit, sila, of seeing fear in faults of the minutest measure, of such kinds as unintentional contravening in a minor training rule of the patimokkha, as an unprofitable thought, he trains himself by undertaking the precepts of training. Whatever there is among the precepts of training to be trained in all that he trains by taking it up rightly. And here, as far as the words one restrained by the patimokkha restraint, virtue of patimokkha restraint is shown by discourse in terms of persons. But all that, beginning with the words possessed of proper conduct and resort, should be understood as said in order to show the way of practice that perfects that virtue in him who so practices it.